the 700 Club, of all people, Rachel Maddow becomes the heroine or the villain, depending on how you look at it, of the Trump tax saga, because she released the findings and they were favorable to Trump. So all of her people are jumping on her. How dare you do something that was favorable to Trump? Well, during the presidential campaign, Democrats questioned whether or not Donald Trump had paid taxes. Now we know that not only did he paid 38 million big ones in 1 year. And that was a headline after somebody leaked one of his tax returns. Did Maddow have a conspirator in the IRS?
Well, many people are asking where they came from. Just where did that tax return come from? Gary Lane has the story.
TV host Rachel Maddow released details of Trump's leaked 2005 tax return on her MSNBC show. She received the two-page 1040 tax form from financial journalist David K. Johnston. Johnston says an unknown source sent it to his mailbox, but he offered some speculation on one possible source.
Let me point out it's entirely possible that Donald sent this to me. Donald Trump has over the years leaked all sorts of things.
Democrats made Donald Trump's unwillingness to release his tax returns a top issue of the 2016 presidential campaign. Last September at the Hofstra University debate, Hillary Clinton pressed Trump, suggesting he was hiding something.
Or maybe he doesn't want the American people, all of you watching tonight, to know that he's paid nothing in federal taxes.
But contrary to speculation by Clinton and other political opponents, Trump's leaked 2005 tax return shows he paid $38 million in taxes on an income of more than $150 million. He also paid tens of millions of dollars in additional excise, sales, and employment taxes. His tax rate, 25%, higher than 2012 Republican presidential nominee Mitt Romney paid in 2011. Responding to the leaked tax return, the White House released a statement saying, "You know you are desperate for ratings when you're willing to violate the law to push a story about 2 pages of tax returns from over a decade ago." The White House went on to say, quote, "The dishonest media can continue to make this part of their agenda, while the president will focus in on his, which includes tax reform that will benefit all Americans." It is illegal for the IRS or anyone to obtain and release a person's federal tax returns without their permission, although journalists are protected if they report the returns, if the information comes from an outside source. And the question remains, who sent the 2005 tax returns to Johnston?
Where these came from is going to be kind of the key question going forward. Who else has copies of these? How many of them exist? Are we going to start seeing other copies from different years pop up? Gary
Lane, CBN News.
Well, Jay Sekulow of the American Center for Law and Justice is with us. Jay, what about this? It is a crime to, certainly for an IRS agent, to release somebody's tax returns. It's amazing that it came out on that ultra-liberal program of Rachel Maddow. What's the deal?
Well, I think, look, if the returns were issued through the IRS, it's a direct violation of Internal Revenue Code 7213, which prohibits, under the penalty of a felony, the disclosure of tax return or what's called tax return information. That's also in the Internal Revenue Manual. Now, a long time ago, I was a lawyer for the Chief Counsel's Office of the IRS, and I had to sign that manual. And we were instructed that even during the course of an audit, if we were handling, say, litigation as part of that, that do not release taxpayer information, that you could be subject to criminal prosecution. So the question here is, where did this come from? If it came from the IRS, an employee of the IRS or a former employee of the IRS, it is a crime. If it was released by a tax return preparer without the consent of the client, it is also a crime. So again, I think this points to the real issue here is, by the way, Donald Trump, for the type of business he was in, paid a lot of taxes. Should have hired me as his tax lawyer. I mean, he paid a lot of taxes. I mean, 25% is a lot in the real estate business with depreciation and all the other advantages that you have in those kind of situations, capital gains and so forth. But the fact is, I think the real story here is, where did this come from? And I think Rachel Maddow last night, I watched that whole hyped up event on MSNBC, and it was, Pat, frankly, it was almost like a Comedy Central. I mean, it was ridiculous. What did it show? That Donald Trump made a lot of money and paid a lot of taxes. That was the story. But the real story here is, did this come from the IRS? If it did, that's a crime.
Jay, what about this secret government, this shadow government? Do you really believe it's there? And what are the evidences of it?
Well, no, I really do think it's there, Pat. I think it's there because you've got unelected bureaucrats that are unaccountable. They are in lockstep with the previous administration, many of them put there by the previous administration, and now they're the Contras. They're those that are opposing the president and his administration. So what do? They leak executive orders. They leak wiretap information. They expand 17 days before President Obama leaves office, the NSA Singtel, the signal intelligence, to allow not just to go to the NSA, who then would determine where it would be dispersed to, but rather to 16 or 17 other agencies, giving a lot more people access to the documents. So I said, look, there is a deep state in that sense. There is a shadow government. They're operating on the fringes, and what they're doing is through leaks, and whether it's the IRS or whether it's NSA, to try to harm the president's agenda. And what the president needs to do is aggressively replace these individuals, find out who they are, and then remove them. And by the way, we're sending out Freedom of Information Act requests, and we're finding all kinds of information about who was in contact with who and who is still there. And we're looking at doing one on this IRS matter, too, to find out who was in charge of taxpayer compliance and taxpayer return information and see if there's any information there that can be gleaned, who might be responsible. But I think the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, needs to get a grand jury impaneled on this NSA leaks and get to the bottom of it.
Well, is that the right procedure? You impanel a grand jury and then bring this information before them? Is that the best way to do it?
Yes, because these are potential crimes. I mean, the sharing of NSA data is a violation of the law also. It's a felony. But I would impanel a grand jury, get people under oath, administer the appropriate questioning. If someone's violated the law, which I'm sure they have, you then go ahead and initiate some prosecutions. You put 2 or 3 people in jail, guess what you don't have anymore? Leaks. That's that simple.
Do you have a knowledge of any particular person or group that's at the center of any of this?
Let me just say it this way, Pat. One of our Freedom of Information Act requests with the State Department will include, you ready for this? 64,000 emails. 64,000 emails. I suspect in those emails, not only the substance of what's in there, but who was receiving them and who was responding will tell us a lot. Do I have the data right now? No, we're just starting to get the evidence. But the Department of Justice can get it, and they could get it internally through a grand jury proceeding. We have to work outside through the Freedom of Information Act request, but we're doing that. But 64,000 emails on one issue. And then I will tell you another one. When James Rosen from Fox News reported that the Iran negotiations were actually going on during the Ahmadinejad regime, which the White House under President Obama tried to deny, we sent a FOIA request when that very bizarre video was edited to remove the date, basically, from those video reports. And we got a confidential, sensitive report marked unclassified that showed that there was intentional tampering with the video. Someone from the Public Affairs Office contacted their production office and said, edit this section out because of a Fox News report. So we're finding out who those people are. We're going to the next step. So we'll get it. The Department of Justice can get it. I believe, Pat, that we've got unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats deep within these agencies that are causing a lot of mischief.
Last question. Would this be like a sideshow if we do this to take us away from tax reform and Obamacare repeal, et cetera, or is it an important thing to get at it right away?
Well, I think you get at it right away, and I think you could do 2 things at the same time. Jeff Sessions has got a big staff at the Department of Justice. Deploy individuals to do the appropriate investigations, and then focus on, as we've talked about before, getting legislative reform done, whether it's the tax bill, which I think needs to happen, whether it's the American Health Care Act, which is up right now. I mean, they need to move, legislation needs to move forward here from this White House. You could investigate and legislate at the same time.
And also, it looks like prosecute. That's the next step? These guys will go to jail. Yeah? Yeah,
I mean, I think that you can't allow, look, the IRS is institutionally incapable of self-correcting. We saw that with the IRS cases. Mm-hmm. We won those at the Court of Appeals. a resounding victory. But the fact is, at the end of the day, we won. We got a great court decision, and our clients got their tax-exempt status. But no one's been held accountable for anything. And that's the real problem with this. So I think the investigations internally need to go on. But they've got to have a legislative affairs shop working at the same time as their prosecutors work. They've got to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. They can. They will. Frankly, they must.
Keep it up, Jay. Jay Sekulow, the American Center for Law and Justice, fighting for you and me.